the human condition is to suffer, right? Like life is painful.
Fallacy.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I would love to hear why it's a fallacy.
Yeah, well, I know 100%, Mark, that's a fallacy. I remember, though, what I know is that people with like us who've struggled with illness, like it's like a moth to a flame when it comes to these ideas of suffering being somehow like a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
I know for myself growing up, I even painted this on my closet. There was a quote by a Greek tragedist named Aeschylus, and they actually put it on Robert Kennedy's grave. And it says, "He who learns must suffer. And even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair against our will comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." And I lived my life through that quote. I lived my life through that. I truly thought that it was through the pain of my suffering that came my personality, that came my complexity, that came the necessary learnings that I had to have. But here's the distinction, Mark. We say suffering is a bad thing. The problem is that what we deem as suffering in our culture, even back with the Greek tragedists, it's actually just called life. That's where we have it wrong. It's just called life. And it's actually, I'm going to call it a matrix that we get trapped in, thinking that the challenges that we go through, like me, my father dying of substance abuse when I was 15, a wonderful man. I loved him dearly. I thought that I was going to be trapped in the pain of that suffering for the rest of my life. Or, family discord, losing ones we loved, marriages breaking up, wars, things of that nature, things that we go through naturally as humans, we call suffering, but it's life. And when I, as a human, label life experiences as suffering, I'm inadvertently trapping myself in that experience, telling myself that it's more, like back to the flower comment, Eric, that it's more than others, that it's unique, that it's too insurmountable for me to get past. And that's actually, viewing life as suffering is how life crushes us, and is actually what leads to, from a physiological place, that overload of feelings of suffering and being overloaded is actually what causes the very imbalance in our chemistry in our bodies that causes mental health and chronic illness in the first place. That, I had to own for myself that I wasn't special, and that I was using my victim story that I could pull out at any time of all the bad things that have happened. I know you alluded to this, Mark or Eric, about just, our stories. I like to call it my victim story, and thanks in part, quote unquote, thanks to our current therapy, that we pull that card out, and that suffering card, that victim story, as the reason why for all our things. When, if I realize that this is life, then I have to realize that it happens to almost everybody in some kind of way. And that as a human, I have the capacity and the internal resilience, when I grow and build it, to overcome said challenges, and that they actually don't weigh us down. That my life that I have is a product of my choices and decisions. That's what I had to realize. I'm not a product of my circumstances or suffering.